In this video, we're going to be breaking down how you can climb all the way to Grandmaster with hit scan. And I'm going to be doing it by breaking down Wanted's gameplay and use support and tank players as well. There's going to be tons of overarching strategy tips that will definitely help you climb. So make sure you watch to the end, smash that like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. All of Wanted's socials will be in the description down below. And let me know what creator we do next and what character we do next. But let's jump into it. So right off the bat, Wanted is going to be holding on this high ground, which is pretty typical if y'all have been playing this map in particular. This is a high ground that people fight for. You start on this high ground, and oftentimes the enemy team need to or have to force you off this high ground. Now, sometimes if the opponents have a high mobility comp, something like a dive, they could dive this high ground directly, or someone like Hammond could go to the point and pull pressure to the point, and then they contest the high ground eventually. But still, the goal on attack should be trying to, at the very least, put your DPS and some of your supports on this high ground, because it's going to be much easier to contest the point that way. And this is where mainly Wanted is going to start. But as the fight progresses, as people go under you and around you, you have to back up and give this space. But then after you win every fight, you should retake this ground and just basically have it so that you can keep applying pressure as the opponents are trying to regroup. And right now, he's just kind of taking shots. He's just trying to apply pressure. He's looking for damage and picks and pretty much whatever is around he tries to shoot, although he has to be a little bit cautious of a Hanzo because he could just randomly get one tap. And now this is actually a point in time where there's a little bit of a mistake being made. Wanted does something right here, and there's something that is a little bit scary. So it's important to know that even the best of players actually make mistakes. And right here, he sees them pushing point, he sees them about to get a tick, and he saw the Orisa antied. So we go here, right, in this frame, and we see that the Orisa's antied, and he knows that the DPS are split. He knows that the Sojourn is main because he held them there, and he knows that the Hanzo is main as well. So when they're on point already, they're split, and this is a huge mistake by the enemy team. The tank is just aggressively pushing here without getting their DPS in position. And especially a character like Orisa, you don't even want to just push your DPS to this ground to fight. So this tank is making a huge mistake, because this tank needs to fight for the high ground so that the Sojourn and the Hanzo can come and play on the high ground. Otherwise, they're either ISO from the team, so like they would be isolated, and then the Sigma and Cass could go kill the Hanzo, kill the Sojourn, or they're in a situation where the DPS are with the Orisa on the low ground, having to fight up to Wanted with the Sigma there. It's just a very, very difficult matchup, because when the other hit scan or the other DPS have the high ground, they have the advantage because of line of sight. They get to control how they're peeking. You got to understand that the floor is a form of cover. So there's a lot of factors at play here that make this an Orisa mistake. However, Wanted goes in here kind of aggressively trying to close this fight out, and he gets a little bit punished because they do have Suzu, right? So he goes into here, and now he's kind of going right into the enemy team. Even though he has his team here, he's going into the enemy team when the Orisa's like full HP and not antied anymore. And he even says like, how am I alive in this engagement? He probably could have died here, but you know, he gets Suzu'd, he gets bailed out, and he immediately tries to take a wider angle, not only positioning himself across, so if they want to actually come and push him, they have to push across the rest of his team, but he's also pushing himself away from where the enemy DPS would be coming from if they finally make it through the choke, which is important because it makes him more survivable. So there's two things here where, you know, that play that he pushed, which was correct if the anti was sticking, because like I said, the DPS were split. But after the Suzu came out, he was in a bad situation, but he immediately recorrects his position after the fact and pushes towards this direction. And he's going to back up towards this area, which is the area towards the Mega. There's a Mega this way. So you can kind of kite back this way if you're in a duel where if opponents are chasing you, you can back yourself up to this Mega and at least have an extra reset with your health. Now, I want you to take note of this Briggs like terrible play here. If we back up in this situation, like this is a pretty like all in play for one, and it's pretty unnecessary, especially considering the DPS got a trade here in picks, so it's actually pretty even here. When the Brig doesn't have confirmation that he's used nade or he's about to get one again, W King like this is incredibly risky against a Cass, and as you see, I mean, like, even without the nade, it would have been super risky, but with the nade, it was basically just giving Wanted a free kill. Definitely a pretty bad play, if I'm being honest. And then here, he's basically just shooting the enemy tank with his team. Sometimes people ask, like, when should they be shooting the tank? Because I say, don't shoot the tank often. Don't shoot the tank. You're wasting your time if you're shooting the tank, especially when they're getting double pocketed. It typically is a waste. But in that situation, because the entire team is putting a lot of damage into the Orisa, and he doesn't want to push around the corner to go kill the Kiriko, because if he does that, he could get sandwiched by the Kiriko and the Orisa. Like, it's very possible that he gets headshot by the Kiriko or hit by the Kiriko and then skewered by the Orisa. If he plays this angle, he's still applying a ton of pressure, forcing the Kiriko to constant pocket, while the Orisa's not really in a situation to hurt him, or no one's in a situation to hurt him. So it's really safe value, and that's kind of what's going on here. So now, right here, this is a situation where you should always retake the high ground, right? After every engagement, you go back to the high ground just like Wanted is doing. You fight the high ground, then you retake the high ground. Then you do a little 180, and you try to hit the 180 sticky, right? However, right here, this should be another situation where they should retake the high ground, right? They won the fight, or they got a pick. You should still go back to the high ground. Now, I know that discipline sometimes can be a little tedious, but that's important, right? Right now, Wanted doesn't really care because he's just, balling out. But if you're trying to be more disciplined in your play and have more consistency in your wins, you want to make sure that after every fight, you return to the default static power position, which is typically the high ground, because you don't want the enemy team to be able to start a fight when you're sitting on this low ground now, when that's not really where you want to be, right? You want to go back to the high ground, force them to take it. So like the Sigma should reposition and Wanted should reposition with the Sigma. That's really what should happen, because right now they're getting a fight and everyone's on the low ground, right? You don't want to be starting on the low ground. There's no point in getting started on the low ground right now. If they were on the high ground, they would have an advantage already. And now the enemy team is going to go push up to this high ground. And basically, because they didn't reposition, the enemy team is going to have the power position going into this next fight, when it wasn't something you had to give them for free. You could make them fight for it, right? If you start on the high ground, if they fight for it, then you drop down. In the first engagement, the enemy team didn't play it properly, but now Wanted's team isn't playing it properly. So definitely interesting. Even Grandmaster players make this big mistake. And see, okay, with the high ground position, the high ground up there, so take note, is that's a high ground position up there where the Sojourn killed the Ana, and that's ground that wasn't being contested by the Sigma or Wanted, because they let the enemy DPS take that position for free without contesting it. Why? Because they didn't reposition to the high ground. I can't repeat this enough. It's so important to maintain that discipline. And I know you're playing ranked. Maybe you don't care. Maybe you're just, grinding it and Wanted GM1. He doesn't really care. But I want to make it clear that for you and your games, making sure that your position is on point is really how you're going to win a lot more consistent fights. And this goes double for anyone that doesn't have mobility that can go to the high ground on a whim. So anyways, we get a kill here. Wanted pops a high noon, dies. Maybe if the Suzu came out a little bit earlier, but honestly, that was kind of a meme play. I think even Wanted himself would admit to that, but, you got to go for, sometimes you got to go for those highlight plays, I feel that a lot. Anyways, the fight's over, the fight's lost. I think it was all directly tied to the positioning and the lack of positioning reset, but let's move on to the next set of engagements going here. Now, once again, we're going to kind of play a little bit forward. You don't necessarily have to play the high ground yet, and right now, Wanted is kind of pushing up, trying to get some of these forward pushers with his team. He's playing a little bit aggressive, but because the enemy's down, they're not really in a position to push him right now. His team is still with him, and even though he's playing on the low ground, the cart right now, so once the cart gets closer around the corner, Wanted and his team would probably want to be playing the high ground to apply pressure. But right now, because the cart is so forward, you can't really play the high ground and be in effective range. And in addition to that, because they got picks already, he can play here for a little while and not get directly punished. Basically, right here, they're going to take an early fight here, and I believe he's going to kill that person. And now he's setting up on the high ground to try to get a little pincer, clear out, and try to clear out whoever's left. And yeah, so typically him and his team are going to have a close fight here, because even if they lose this fight, they're going to be able to reset up on the high ground once the cart moves around the corner. So taking a close fight, if you're in position, if you're all regrouped in time, is actually pretty good. You still want to kind of set up on this high ground once it goes around the corner, but you don't have to be like all the way back on the back high ground. In fact, with Cassidy, if you're really outside of your effective range, especially against characters like Hanzo, you could feel kind of worthless. So it's better for you to play around here. Now, I want you to take a note here. A lot of people ask me, when can I flank on DPS? When can I flank on Cass? How do I pull off a flank? And this is a perfect example. The fight is about to start. His team is already set up in their positions. They're already set up. Some of them are on the high ground, some of them on the low ground. His Sigma's right there on the cart. And the fight's about to start. What he's going to do here is temporarily, he's going to remove himself from the fight, taking a short flank around this corner. And he's going to crouch to completely cut off his sound. Now, what he's basically trying to do is he's trying to sneak up on a target that is distracted, set up on this high ground or set up on the low ground that is distracted, either healing, dealing damage, or something like that, and get an insta-kill on that person, and then apply enough pressure that with his front line applying pressure, they can win the fight by pinching. And he might die in this process, but he will make sure to get value before he dies. Now, the trick here is in order to get this to work, you can't make first contact. If you try to make first contact and the enemy team is not fully engaged, you could just, get the play ruined and die, right? You also have to be, so that means you have to be really patient, and you also have to make sure not to flank too soon because you want the enemy to already be like focused on the front line, trying to get picks, trying to heal. That's what you need your team to do. And if you flank too soon and the enemy are not quite like distracted by the front line yet, you're going to get caught out and killed. So those are a couple of things that you should think about when you're trying to flank. So he's waiting here. He hears the Hanzo shooting that way. So he's going to go flank this Hanzo, see the Hanzo distracted, so he gets to get a free kill on that Hanzo. And now he gets to pinch while his team is pushing in. His Sojourn's ulting, his team is applying pressure. Now he gets to pinch this, and he gets to apply a ton of pressure to the enemy team. Take notice, he gets peeled very heavily, but at this point, he already got the initial pick. His team already applied a ton of pressure, and these players are not going to be able to kill him because, the pinch happened. That's a pinch that happened from the back, from the front. They just don't really have the resources to punish him directly here. Now he's going to go reposition up to the high ground, the slight high ground. Not really married to the high ground, but now the cart is a little bit further along. And I want you to know that once this cart gets to this stage and beyond, now this high ground and the other high ground to the left become a lot more powerful, especially for Cass. Like I said, Cass doesn't really want to play at max distance. So, being a little bit further away, or the cart being a little bit closer now, allows him to take these positions a lot easier. That being said, he's going to drop right down. Not entirely sure why he did that. He went all the way up to the high ground, then dropped right down. He could have stayed up high, but he wants to do this flank play again. Now, this one's a little bit riskier, right? His DPS is dead. He's going for this flank again. He already did this flank before, which doing a flank twice is less likely to work. However, sometimes doing like an all-in flank, especially when he has high noon, he might try to get a pick that could leverage this numbers disadvantage. So instead of trying to just run away and retreat or, play on the front line really safe, he's trying to go for an all-in play that might actually turn this numbers disadvantage into an advantage. So, he's looking around trying to clear. He does get spotted out first, so he tries to back off, or he takes the 1v1. Actually manages to get a kill here. Actually manages to kill the Lucio here, but dies in the process when he got scouted out. He was in a really hard situation here because if he retreated, the enemy team knew where he was going to come from, and he could get just pushed by the tank. And the enemy knew where he was, so he didn't really know where to go. So he thought, okay, I'll just not peek the Sojourn and try to get some kills on the front line. And he did manage to finish off this Lucio, which was good, but then he got killed. He got traded out. Still better than the worst case scenario, which is just dying for free. So yeah, like right now, the battle is really happening around here. And this will typically happen, like I said, until the cart gets pushed a little bit forward. And then the fight will be for the high ground. Really, something that the DPS could do here, though, that I think would be really good at opening this fight up is because no one on this team is contesting this height. The DPS could go, or DPS and a support could go and take this high ground and start putting damage into the back line. Like imagine if the Hanzo takes this high ground position with this Kiriko, all of a sudden there's a crazy amount of pressure on wanted and unwanted supports. And if a support dies or support's under pressure and they have to back up, now the Sigma can't stay here. So like that would be a really good idea. And so like because a good player would do that, typically what you would want to do is like some amount of presence should be on the high ground. Not necessarily wanted, because wanted's Cass, and Cass plays a lot better here in his effective range. But if there's another DPS and a support that can play the high ground, just so that you have some amount of presence there, so that a solo or a duo push by like a duo split by the enemy team doesn't take that high ground for free, that's going to be a little bit better because that's like a vulnerability that is in this stage of the fight, but that may or may not actually happen. It depends on whether or not the opponents actually see that and try to go play for that. So right now the Orisa is pushing in. Oh wow, that was a ricochet shot. I think it looked like a ricochet shot. Ultimates are being invested. No one got rose up. Sag. He did take the high ground with it, though. The Sigma took the high ground with it, so that's pretty good. Yeah, that was a crazy shot. Honestly, so, like, this is how I always describe it. If you're dying, Die to an ultimate, a reset, or a insane shot by the enemy player. Don't die to just like an average ability use or shot, because then your positioning is poor. You're out of position. You're not taking an inappropriate matchup. But if the opponent has to hit something phenomenal in order to kill you, well, play around that as much as you can, of course. But it's a lot better than dying to something that is just super regular. Because something that's phenomenal, maybe you made the right play, but then the opponent just hit an insane shot to overcome it. That can happen a lot. Or you just die randomly because the opponent's hit a really crazy grapple shot or something like that. So it looks like because the card is positioned here, this is a situation where the high ground needs to be contested, right? Because now this high ground over here overlooks the cart. So like this is really where people want to go and fight now. So like I want you to know how his entire team is now high ground position. Basically his entire team, maybe outside of the Sigma. Even though the Sigma should probably stay up here too, because it's going to be really hard for him. It's really hard for you to hold this against a tank. Now the big problem though is that Sigma has a hard time holding directly against Orisa. Something that Sigma really wants to do is poke a target down, poke them down a lot before they go in and try to close them out. With Orisa in particular, you want to play pretty far away until the target is low HP or low cooldowns or something like that. And this close range up top is not really that suited for Sigma. You could maybe play on the edge, but Orisa could definitely force you off. Still would be good to start there, but yeah, the second Orisa comes here and clears out this high ground, it's probably going to force the vast majority of people on Wanted's team, including Wanted, to just leave. That's probably what's going to happen. Still something that tanks should do. A lot of tanks don't do this. I've been coaching a lot of players. Tanks need to be clearing these power positions from the DPS. This is super, super important because the difference between the Orisa going up here and clearing off this high ground and the difference between the Orisa just pushing main is the difference between Wanted staying up here and the Wanted being forced to leave up here, or Wanted and his team. It's a huge, huge difference. If you force your DPS to try to clear the high ground, they're more at risk of death than an Orisa is or any other tank. So as far as fundamental play styles, like that's just something that's fundamental to tank that is really important. You have to clear these power positions. There's a million examples I will have. I'll do it in future videos, but it's just really, really important. The Orisa, after they cleared, they come down, they pop an ult, they go in kind of ham. Wanted manages to clear out this Orisa, and I think this Brig as well, and I think this Hanzo as well. Oh my god, he's going for the high noon. No way. Jesus. Okay, well, actually want to kind of turn that fight. So like here, we're in last fight territory. Really kind of want to go back to this high ground. But there is a couple of things that you should consider here. Because the time is super low, the enemy team isn't really going to want to fight for the high ground. They don't really have the time. Like this Ryan doesn't have the time to go clear the high ground for his team. But that's more of a reason why you should be set up on the high ground, because the enemy team cannot clear you. Maybe not the Sigma, but I actually think the Sigma could be playing the back high ground. And the idea is you let the Rhine push this cart, and the Cass and the Sigma are both applying pressure to the background. Look for picks from this high ground, because the enemy cannot come and clear you, right? If the Sigma and the Cass are both on the high ground, the enemy DPS can't come to the high ground because they'll just get zoned out by the Sig. And that means that Wanted gets free reign. And once y'all get picks, then you can go and kill the Rhine. The whole goal is to stop them from capping this point, right? Playing this low ground gives the Rhine an opportunity to potentially actually get some swings in, fight in his effective range. His DPS could go take that high ground. So there's a couple of factors here. I think positionally, both the Sigma and Wanted should probably go take that high ground. Granted, they do have a rush, so that's probably why they decided to play the low ground. Just because they have the rush. Still think rushing from the high ground would be better here. It looks like the fact that this Rhine is beating on the Sigma in the first place is not really it's not really the fight you want to take, because Rhine wants to swing and Sigma wants to keep his range. It doesn't really matter though. It looks like Nano Gravitic Flux. Maybe it will be enough. I think it should be enough to hold. Is this Sigma dead? Oh, he did die. Yeah. So the Sigma died. So yeah, so it wasn't enough. So yeah, okay. This is kind of what I'm talking about. Like they had Nano, they had Gravitic Flux, and they had Kitsune Rush, and they still like lost this fight. I think they might actually lose this. Let me look. No, they hold. How'd they hold? Oh, the Bastion comes in and kills 2? The Bastion comes in and kills 3? Sheesh. Okay, so it was close. It was actually pretty close. They actually do hold, surprisingly. But, this is kind of what I'm talking about, how this fight progressed. Here, this Rhine getting swings in, applying pressure, being able to pressure this Sigma, being able to swing on this Sigma, the Brig, like all of this was not needed to, they did not have to engage this at all, right? If they're set up on the high ground, either up there or the behind high ground, the back high ground, they can just poke out the Kiriko and poke out the other DPS and just try to find an advantage. Like, bait out a ton of utility, bait out a ton of cooldowns. Because really, like, a Rhine and Brig would have to, like, normally they would want to clear the high ground, right? They would want to clear it. But they don't have that luxury because of the time. So they have to go to point. But if you play the high ground, it's free. So this is, like, once again, kind of like a positional thing. And it just kind of shows that even Grandmasters make this positional mistake where, you know, they play the high ground sometimes, they give it up, but then they don't retake it. It's kind of like the same problem we saw in the first point, which is kind of funny. But still, I think it's actually a really important lesson to learn from everyone's point of view. Pretty much everyone can apply this to their gameplay. Because they literally almost lose that after they invested 3 ults. Can you imagine if they poke from the high ground first? I mean, it's a Sojourn, Hanzo, and Kiriko. You could poke from the high ground as Cass and as freaking Sigma. You could have baited out the slide from Sojourn. Could have baited out the Suzu and teleport from Kiriko. You could have ulted. Then after you ulted with Gravitic Flux Nano, then you could have rushed. I mean, there's just a million ways to have played that where it would have been like pretty much impossible to lose with all the ultimates you had. But because the Sigma played on point, it actually opened up that fight to a potential loss, which is crazy. And like I said, the enemy team made a lot of mistakes too, primarily not punishing they only cleared the high ground 1 time. So yeah, and the DPS never made this like high ground take. They never took advantage of that. So now right now he's kind of just peeking at the low ground, looking for opportunities. They are going to try to keep poking this low ground until they can take this high. Notice how Sigma immediately takes height. This is great. Sigma immediately takes height here. Unfortunately, the Zen dies, but ooh, what the heck is that play by the Ramatra? That is a terrible play. Yeah, it's terrible. I don't know really how else to say that. Maybe he thought that his block would completely save him, but up against Sticky, it doesn't. But still, shouldn't put yourself in that position. Got way too over-aggressive. And especially, like, if we back this up a frame, like, right here, we're wanted setting up here. Let's show right here. So he has a cross angle, right, between his teammates. So this Ana can, like, nade. Like, if a Ramatra pushes up past this point, the Ramatra could get naded, slept, beamed, stickied, freaking stuck by wanted sticky grenade, freaking rocked by Sigma up top. Like, there's no reason for this player to push up this far. 100% not. I mean, it's way too dangerous. They were just thinking they're immortal over here. I don't even know what the hell they're doing. But and you could say, oh, they didn't really play around like an Echo with the beam and the sticky of Cass. But it's like, if you don't have any information about what the opponents are, it'd be in your best interest not to push in too aggressively until you understand what you have to play around. Because, yeah, them dying here, like, they did get a pick, but them dying here pretty much means that this point's going to be for free. A Sigma uncontested, like a Sigma that doesn't have to worry about another tank to, like, keep him in check, is pretty much just going to dominate your backline. That's just kind of what's going to happen. Like, the Sigma's going to go help you take, like, look at what the Sigma does. Look at how the Sigma scales this fight. The second the enemy tank is dead, the Sigma just comes and takes this high ground and just shields off these DPS and, whittles down the turret, shields off the DPS, and the Hanzo can't do shit because he has a Sigma in his face and a shield in his face, and it's just, like, over. Like, it's just over. Like, the Sigma will literally just dominate the point. I mean, like, I know once it's, like, here, like, applying pressure and dealing damage, but, like, it could be anything. It could literally just be, like, a freaking Ana and a Sigma, and it wouldn't even matter. Like, the Sigma just gets to scale here and just gets to go. So, like, I guess you have to ask the question. You might be asking the question, what do you do in this situation? You're tank fed. You're tank inted. What do you do on defense? Typically, the best thing that you could do is either you could play until the Sigma does scale like that and push like that. You can definitely play for pickoffs, but most of the time, the best case scenario is that you back up and out of the point, especially if you did get picks and there's only like maybe 3 or 2 people alive, because then you have enough time to at least wait and buy time for your tank to return. If the entire enemy team's alive, that's not going to happen. So most of the time you have to go to like one of the wider angles, play the outskirts of this area, trying to basically play keep away from the Sigma and try to find an opportunity to get a pick. It depends on what character you are, but typically you have to get criticals or hit a skill shot or something like that if you want to try to get picks. Because you got to realize that if the entire enemy team is alive or a giant amount of them, they're going to cap the point far before your tank's back. If the fight is not retakeable, it's better to just, regroup and set up so that you can set up and take a more aggressive fight, kind of like how wanted teams Wanted's team did. Okay, so I want you to see something right here, right off the bat. This is something that Wanted is actually fighting for. It's funny because Wanted is actually trying to take this high ground, and this is actually the enemy team actually controls this high ground. On defense, neither Wanted nor the enemy team like really contested this high ground except for like one time. So it's funny how like both teams are thinking about it now. Both Wanted and the enemy team. Yeah, like the entire enemy team set up here. The entire enemy team set up here. But on defense, no one on Wanted's team set up here. And the enemy team didn't really try to fight for this except for like one time. It's so funny. What Wanted is doing, like sneaking to the high ground can work, but not when it's being contested. It's way better to like get your tank up there. If you get your tank up there, you can kind of do exactly what they did on the first point where the tank helps to clear this. You don't have to do it right away. Like I said, you want to push the card a little bit forward so that it's like kind of turning the corner. But you know, if you can take this high ground, I think it's really, really strong. So it's fine to take it earlier, honestly. You don't really have to push the cart right away if you don't want to, especially if you have someone else that can kind of push it. So something that his Sigma could actually do is his Sigma could play here. If his Sigma goes here and shields that off, they have to drop from here. Hanzo's a little bit trickier because Hanzo can just take it right back up. The second the Sigma can force the Hanzo off, the Sigma could drop, the Hanzo could take it back up. But the Torb, if he drops, he can't retake it. So like you just make him drop and then you can just drop down right afterwards. No, so close. Oh, no, so close. Okay, I don't know what's happening. No, so close, dude. Like 3 times. Not like this. Okay, he's not gonna go take the high ground here because they're just staggering out these kills. I mean, they had to use a lot of ults, but it doesn't matter. Mainly just Flux. Mainly just Flux. So Wanted's playing here, trying to get some staggers here. But then he's gonna give space and back up. Nice kill. He's gonna give space and back up. They're basically just trying to snowball this. So the idea is the enemy team doesn't really have the luxury to full group. And sometimes because the enemy is sloppy, they just don't group up enough. So they're basically coming out here. And because Wanted's pushed up, he's putting him in a situation where he's getting picks. And the enemy team is not going to get a full fight to hold this. That's the idea anyway. It is a little risky, but with all this time in the bank, it's typically worth the risk, and his team is pushing up with him, so it's perfectly fine. Yeah, see, like, they just basically got to snowball this, and the enemy team hasn't... Okay, that was a good shot by the Hanzo, but it doesn't even matter. So, yeah, this is basically just trying to break down some insights into what it's like at Grandmaster, some of the things that you should be incorporating in your games if you want to succeed, and how you can flank, how you can apply pressure, how you can contest high grounds, and things that you should incorporate if you want to win these fights on the strategic front as well as the mechanical one. So if you have any questions, definitely let me know down below, and do me a huge solid and go check out Wanted. His Twitch and YouTube will be in the description. Fantastic streamer, and let me know what content creator you want me to break down next about their specific gameplay. Let me know, and I'll see you next time.